Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Webster and welcome to the very first episode of Off the Record. Yes, another bloody sports podcast. This one, I can assure you, will be different. It's a dreamy malaise of breaking news, hard opinions, a look under the bonnet of the biggest stories of the week, as well as a healthy dose of gibber, banter and Group 1 sledging. I can't do this all alone, so let me introduce you to my co-pilot as we embark on this mysterious journey into the world of sport. As he'll regularly remind you, he's a journalism legend who's been at this caper for half a century. He's broken some of the biggest stories in Australian sport, dating back to his very first exclusive about Daly Messenger defecting to rugby league in 1908. He's been sports editor of the Daly and Sunday Telegraphs. He's been a sports editor at large and now a columnist who's shrinking before our very eyes. He's a regular of NRL 360 and has somehow made Braith and Astor almost funny. And there isn't a radio station on the eastern seaboard he hasn't sent an invoice to in the past month. We mostly know him, though, for his long-standing column, What's the Buzz, each Sunday. It's sports version of Media Watch. Everyone loves it until they're in it. He's the Sterling to my Kenny, the Goose to my Maverick, the Millie to my Vanilli. He's scared of no man, very few women, and only a handful of Roosters directors. He is, of course, Phil Buzz Rothfield.
Webby, you can write a little bit.
You reckon?
Yeah, you go, well, I don't know.
I just said that off the top of my head.
Wow, you did not.
How are you,
I
Buzz?
can see
I just, you can see the lights.
Wow, you reckon I covered Daly Messenger, eh?
I reckon.
No, not quite.
I just thought for the auspicious occasion, Buzz, of our new podcast.
Mate, how exciting. Off the Record, it's called. You happy with that name?
I
Took
do
us
like
a
it.
while, yeah.
Well, it took us a while to come up to it.
I wanted to call us the old hacks. but
well, I wanted blocked by Gus, but I don't think that'd be a bit too cryptic.
yeah, probably. No, it's great to be here. And as you said, it is different to the others. We're going to make it newsy. We're going to make it very opinionated. And people who've been following our work know that we do have opinions that, not everyone agrees with. We can be a little bit polarising at times.
With each other, even with ourselves.
Yeah, can I tell the story about when I nearly knocked you out at the Daly? We'll keep that for another episode.
Oh, sure. Or do you want to talk about it now?
No, we've got more important stuff to discuss.
So we're going to talk. We've got actually some breaking news that we can talk about very soon about Peter V'landys, the Chief Executive of Racing New South Wales and the Chair of the Australian Rugby League. Before we get into it, Buzz, let me just, because it's our first one, let's first thank the people who are behind us here, Mark Burris and all the team at Mentored Studios where we're filming today. Nick Fordham and Max Muddle, Sam, Jonah, all the team have been really, really good in getting this over the line. So we're very, very happy to be partnering with these guys and our friends at News Corp.
No, it's a great venture, Webby, because we not only have the team at Mentored Studios behind us, we have News Corp and the Telegraph and the Australian, where your column appears every week, and the Code website. So, look, we're putting it out there and hopefully people will listen.
How's your week been, Buzz?
Mate, it hasn't been too bad. I've been, as you said, I've did the old 360 on Monday. I've had to fly to Queensland, do a bit of business. Caught up with a player agent, Steve Chimes-Gillis, this morning. Did an 8-kilometre walk with him, and so I've come in feeling okay.
Look at you, ready to go. All right, well, let's get into this is going to be a weekly segment, Champs and Chumps, where we give our salute and our...
Bit like Saint and Sinner.
A little bit. Yeah. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure we've recycled the name. All right, well, you go first. Who's your champ of the week?
I'm in such a good mood. My champ is Wayne Bennett.
Oh, my God.
You know why? Because Wayne has brushed me since COVID, since I sprung him at Grappa Restaurant in Leichhardt while every NRL type was in lockdown. And Wayne got suspended for 2 weeks. It was all over the back page, the front page, and I thought he gave me life. So after Cronulla beat South last week, I thought I'll send him a cheeky text message. I just said, #up Cronulla. And he replied, "What are you on?"
Is that it?
Yeah, but we're communicating.
You're back.
And we then had a little bit of banter. I said to him, "You've upset Peter Bedell because you've given him the arse and you're now dealing with Reedy." And he liked that. He said, "That's quite funny."
Oh, very good.
Mate, I don't want to be off with the super coach. But I had to write the story all that time ago. Anyway, we'll talk about feuds in another podcast, I'm sure. What's yours?
Well, I wrote a book on Wayne a few years ago that came out. We haven't spoken at all.
Really?
No. I'm waiting for him to
I didn't think there was anything particularly offensive in it. It was a very, interesting account.
You're saying it's boring. Thanks, Buzz.
No, I thought it was a very, very interesting account of his colourful existence in rugby league.
Thank you. I think it's just it's a Wayne thing. He likes to stuff with your head.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So my champ.
Yeah.
This will be a controversial start. My champ's Reggie the Rabbit.
What?
The 81-year-old Reggie the Rabbit, South Sydney mascot, for shoving the 9-year-old Sharks supporter. Because if you're going to whack a 9-year-old rugby league supporter, it might as well be a Sharks supporter. They're very lippy. They're very lippy, your mob.
There goes my credibility. Episode 1, about 3.5 minutes into it, you've just...
I've said it's all right to hit kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're very lippy, the Cronulla supporters. I've seen them down at Shark Park or
Look, there wasn't too much damage.
Caltex or whatever you call it these days.
There wasn't too much damage done, but
no.
I'm glad he apologised.
I tell you what I love. If anything sums up rugby league, it's the fact that Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister, the day before a federal budget, is getting his people to get briefed on what's happened with Reggie the Rabbit.
What a good...
Because he's going to get asked at the press conference. Do you know I called Blake Solly, the South CEO, and I said I couldn't help it. I said, Blake, I'm just ringing about an important story. What are you going to do with that wascally wabbit? So I'm glad he...
I had to ring Blake on Sunday night about it because... but you know what? The punters loved that story, Webby.
Apparently, Blake...
It was the highest rating story I wrote all week. The video of 81-year-old Reggie the Rabbit shoving a 9-year-old fan.
I like how they said, Reggie, don't do any TV interviews. He said, no, I won't. And he did 2. Right, what's your chump?
My chump, NRL referees.
Oh.
And I'm not going to turn this into a whinge-a-thon, but do I blame the referees or I blame the people in the NRL football department who have them under instruction to go really hard with some type of blitz in the opening rounds of the season? Now, Webby, I've done some homework. Penalties. 2021, first 3 rounds, 6.4 penalties a game. This year, 11.3. They've nearly doubled.
What?
And they'll always say, oh, you can't compare up, It's the same 3 rounds. And I'll tell you, these set restarts, they're so untransparent. Is that a word, untransparent? No one knows.
Let's go with it.
We'll go with it. 2023, 3.7 restarts per game. 2025, again, almost doubled. They're up to 6 restarts per game.
You know what it is?
Did you see Canberra Manly?
I did.
You know what? I have to watch every game because I'm doing this podcast, I'm doing a radio, and I so wanted to turn that rugby league game off.
Really?
I did, Webby.
Yeah, it's you know what it is? It's a restart-a-thon. It's too much. It's too much. It's sort of, I think they had the balance right for much of last year, and now it's gone way too many restarts, too quick. And you know what I hate about it, Buzz? They're too subjective. You know what I mean? And I don't know if you've noticed this year. I don't know. It'd be good to do these stats. There seems to be a hell of a lot late in the tackle count. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and that just must turn coaches insane.
And
more insane.
And football players are smart enough at the back end of a tackle count to sort of behave themselves the best. So I would have thought they'd be more unlikely to give one. But anyway, give us a chump, Webby.
Queensland cricket.
Queensland cricket.
They've thrown poor old Usman Khawaja under the bus. I know we're going to clash on this.
Isn't he playing in the Shield?
Yeah, but they accused him of faking a hamstring injury.
Oh, well,
that's a pretty ordinary claim.
Was he in the Louis Vuitton suite?
I noticed he was spotted in your What's the Buzz column.
No, he wasn't.
Along
Joseph
with just
Swaley, he was there,
right.
and he shouldn't have been there.
But he was
because his team was playing up at Suncorp.
Yes, I agree with you.
Right.
I also agree that it wasn't a good look for Usman, who was injured, to be down the Grand Prix,
But what's your problem? They
accused him of pulling out of that last game with a hammy, and they said he never mentioned it to the physios, and then Usman said, yes, I had talked to them, and it's also in the injury management system. I thought that was pretty piss weak from Cricket Queensland or Queensland Cricket, whatever they want to call themselves up there these days.
Are you going to cane them in your weekend?
I'm going to get
Australian.
I'm getting at the inflatable baseball bat. And I'm going to take it to Queensland Cricket's head.
Wow.
Cop that.
Wow. Does your column get checked legally for defamation reasons?
Can I tell you a funny story?
Because when you whack someone, you dead set whack.
Well, I don't. I learned from the best. You. All right. We got our next segment. You heard it here first, unless, of course, it doesn't happen. But we've got some great breaking news from the world of rugby league and racing, Buzz. What do you got for me?
Peter V'landys.
Never heard of him.
Haven't you?
No. It's
the most dynamic official in Australian sport, I am told, will make a decision this year on his administrative future. I think he's now, and, I've made a lot of phone calls, I think he is now on the verge of deciding between racing and rugby league. At his age, with a young family, I think the jobs have become too stressful for him to manage and have some sort of decent life with it. I'll start off by saying this, Webby, before we come in. Racing has become a real snake pit. The $5 billion sale of Rose Hill, okay? The Mark Latham pile-on and the parliamentary inquiry where he said some disgusting things about Peter V'landys and, a lot of other people. He's not talking to Gay Waterhouse and, the Chris Waller relationship has been a little bit strained. I'm not sure that he will stay in racing. The problem is, in racing, he is on more than $1 million as CEO. In rugby league, as chairman of the Independent Commission, I understand he's on 150 to 200,000. So the Constitution...
He's on 200 for the championship.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then the other directors, I think, are on 100. So the Constitution would need to be changed if rugby league was to put Peter V'landys on full-time in a position that would allow Andrew Abdo, obviously, a great administrator, to stay on as chief executive, but Peter would then become an executive chairman on a salary of $1 million plus. Now, everything he's delivered for rugby league, if that was in the corporate world, he'd be on 3 or 4 mil, like the boss of BHP or Qantas with shares. And so, Webby, watch this space.
That's big news, Buzz. I got to say, I'm not entirely surprised by it. I've known Peter for a long time, not as long as you, but dealt with him. I've dealt with him basically for almost 26 years, and we've had our ups and downs, PVL and I, but we're in a good spot at the moment. I've never seen him so worn down by the racing job than I did last year. The way Mark Latham went him under parliamentary privilege was pretty ordinary. I think V'landys said, go out on the street and say some of the stuff that you're throwing around. I thought it was, Mark Latham's a coward, so I'm not really particularly surprised by that. The game's flying. He basically operates as an executive chair anyway, don't you reckon?
Yes, he does.
And I think he's got nothing left to prove in racing. They are all coming for him, and whether that's right or not, and the way that he operates, he's a bulldozer. The way that he goes, and he upsets a lot of people. But you can't deny what he's done in racing. But I get that impression that he's so worn down by it that he might as well become executive chair of rugby league, because rugby league is flying. Whether you like what he's done or not, it's been a huge success under his chairmanship. He's got a lot to do in league. I think he's bitten off 2 really big ones, potentially 3. The Vegas experiment, obviously PNG and Perth, whether that happens or not. But I mean, it needs his undivided attention. He runs rugby league out of his office in the Druitt Street offices. Yeah. So I'm for it, and we might as well do it. And he seems to be getting on with everyone in rugby league for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, look, I've checked with my sources at Racing New South Wales, and interesting for a guy who's such a high flyer, not just in Australian sport, but in the corporate world. I understand if he wants to, he can walk out of Racing New South Wales on a month to 6 weeks' notice. That he's not locked in there with a long-term contract. They obviously don't want to lose him. He's been CEO there since 2004, so that's 21 years. He started the Everest, the championships. He brought in $1 billion a year with the bookies, field legislation. He fought off
the Pope.
The equine influenza and
the Pope.
Wanting a concert at the
World Youth Day at Randwick.
Yeah, but to give you an idea of his value in rugby league, Webby, when he came onto the commission, the game was losing $4 or $5 million a year. Now it is making a $62 million profit from $730 million in revenue. The important thing is, when he started, 11 clubs lost a combined $60 million a year. If things hadn't changed, particularly after COVID, I believe, I'm not sure anyway, that all of those 11 clubs would have survived the way they were travelling. They are now all making money. They're getting $5 million over the salary cap. The good thing is, I spoke to Peter in Las Vegas. He wants to stay to ensure the PNG project works and works successfully, like the Dolphins. And he also wants to stay around to do the TV deal, the broadcast deal. He wants to get it up there with the AFL money and better than the AFL, because it's the most viewed sport in this country. I would not be surprised if commissioners make a move very, very soon to look at the Constitution with their legal people and probably involve the clubs. And as you said, he's getting on well now with Blake Solly. He once called a flea fucker. Am I allowed to say that? But he did. It's a fact. He's getting on with Shane Richardson, who's looking at the purchase of Super League. He's getting on with Ben I. Rugby league's his happy place. It is.
It's everybody's happy place.
Not really.
Yeah, not when your team's losing. Not when you're a Dragon.
Our game, rugby league, cannot afford to lose him.
You're very adamant. Well said, Buzz. I'll tell you what, but the Constitution can only change with
clubs.
With the clubs. Yeah. But that's right, though. But that's the thing, though. The clubs, but this is where I reckon PVL is such an operator. Like, he knew where his bread was buttered, and that was to keep the clubs happy. And that's fair enough, because they felt disrespected for years. So he's thrown a stack of cash at them, as you said, $5 million over the cap. They'd be mad not to
well, he got 600 off PNG. He had to share it.
I know, but
even when you say that, I think he's half sweet with the players now too, because he ended up stepping in when Andrew Abdo was having problems and gave the players their money.
I know. He is the man of golden feathers.
Have you met a better administrator ever, anywhere?
I don't always agree with the way he goes about business.
No, that's fair enough. Yeah, a lot of people don't.
No. But he's, you know what? Where I think PVL is very, very. I find him fascinating, Buzz. I've got to say, we've had some absolute ding dong Barneys on the phone. and we go in and out. But we've sort of, I'm probably more critical of him than most reporters.
You are,
or columnists. But I've always found like I've had to be because so many others are like so tight with him. I love the fact that this is the difference between AFL. I don't like it the way that he's picking fights with the AFL, but even the AFL acknowledge how smart he is. But when he does that, when he has a crack at Andrew Dillon from the AFL or whoever, he's playing to an audience because people in league go, "Good on you, you're sticking it up the other code." And I think he's very, very smart like that.
But Webby, I've had blues with him. Remember that ridiculous Magic Round crackdown?
Oh, yeah,
yeah. I think he was behind that. I went ballistic about it. We argued on the phone, but he respected the fact there is another opinion out there that was over the top. Anyway.
No, it's a really interesting story, Buzz. Look at that, bang. Started with a bang.
Look, I think it is, and I think it's a very important story in Australian sport. And look, racing will struggle to find anyone remotely as good who will be able to, But I think his job's nearly done there.
Sing it, sister. I'm with you. All right, let's get to the news of the week. It has been a pretty big one in rugby league, and obviously the main story has been Daly, Cherry Evans and the extraordinary set of circumstances on Monday night in which he told Channel 9 that he wouldn't be at Manly last year, and then NRL 360, you were on it with Brent Reid, and the news broke. It was compelling TV, and the way that you and both Brent Reid reacted to it and then got on the phones, and the news broke that through the show that Manly were tabling a 2-year deal, which is something I've never, ever bloody seen in my life. How have you reacted to the Cherry Evans news?
You've been in the NRL 360 studio, and our producer, Mitch Stiffen, always does a double-page run sheet, and we try to share it round and make sure all clubs are covered to keep all fans happy. And we got about a third of the way into it, and then the story broke on a rival network, and good on them. It was a big story, and we immediately changed tack, had to work out and analyse it with no warning. And during the ad break, I spoke to Scott Penn, Rudy spoke to Tony Mestroff, and we were able to come back with and tell listeners what was really happening.
How blindsided were you, Buzz?
When you say blindside,
I mean, the story's been bubbling around about there being unhappiness there.
Yeah, look, I've written a couple of pieces on it that the Cherry or DCE might have thought he was a little bit disrespected, and Manly not making it clearer that they did want him for another 2 years on big dollars, which he deserves. But he said, he told him it was all over in December.
That's right.
But look, I think. You asked me, I think both camps have handled it really, really poorly. I think DCE, for what Manly, I know he's done a lot for Manly. I think what that club's done for him over 15 years in some difficult situations. They broke the salary cap once for him, remember? Bozo had to stand down as general manager of Manly.
That's right.
Joe Kelly got suspended, all for DCE.
Can I say this?
And I don't think Tony Mestroff or Scott Penn have covered themselves in glory in that they left it up to Peter Gentle, their recruitment man, to do this deal.
So you dropped the F-bomb before, so we've got to. We're not going to be.
Well, I was quoting Peter V'landys.
That's fine. Well, look. We're not going to.
Fancy you, mate. You swear like a trooper.
Oh, fuck off.
How dare you?
Look, we're not going to be swearing like wharfies throughout this podcast, but we've both grown up in newsrooms, so we might. But whichever way you spin it, cut it, slice it, dice it, Manly fucked this up. How can you have a bloke who is your captain, your halfback, an international, an origin superstar who is playing probably the best footy of his career, how you don't go there and sit him down and get the deal done after Origin last year and say, mate, we cannot let you go. You are not going anywhere. What do you need? Don't you reckon?
Absolutely,
I think the bigger problem here is a power play at Manly, where either Mestrov, Penn, Seabold, whoever just can't cop Cherry Evans being the dominant
Cherry Evans
figure in that club.
Is a different dude.
He always has been.
Yeah, he's
I
a
get
different.
that.
And he's not as easiest to get on with as the Trebojevic brothers, Jake and Tom.
I know, but Buzz,
He's not.
He's your captain.
Yeah, I know he's the captain, and I know he's had the most glamorous career. He is a Manly Seagulls legend, and am I fair saying he's in the top 3 with Bobby Fulton, DCE, all those guys? But
Did you just put DC in the same?
no, I said he's in the top 3 with Bozo on top.
That's
Yeah.
Bozo.
And the interesting thing is Bozo left at the end of his career too and went to the Sydney Roosters.
It never ends well at Manly, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I think it's a shame that it's heading this way. And look, I think DCE could have been a lot more polished in the way he did it. You know, to turn up on Channel 9. I'm not dirty on Channel 9. I texted Danny Wide. I'm not. I texted Danny Wide and I said, good get. I did. When you get beaten a story, you've got to acknowledge it. I thought we fought back strong on the footy show and we broke the story that they used 100% footy to put the offer that had been made on 360 to.
I know.
It was a fascinating night of television.
I tell you what, though, as I was watching, because I've been on Tuesday nights on 360. God, I'm glad I wasn't on.
Yeah.
I would have had to actually make some phone calls.
Yeah, well, lucky they picked up. The one man who didn't take my call was Joe Webby, the manager.
Does he ever pick up?
I'm not sure he's accredited, that guy. I'm checking that out for
He's
my
a
weekend.
mysterious type, Joe.
Yeah. Well, what's he doing handling these negotiations? Is he handling them?
Is it his son, Jonathan,
I
that
don't
does
know,
it?
Webby.
I don't know. But to me, so everyone's... Without getting into a big, philosophical debate about the whole transfer system in rugby league, that's a story for another time. And it's like it just changes and changes. To me,
Blake told me today he's going to Redcliffe.
Okay.
Blake told me he's going to Redcliffe. Reliable bloke.
Right.
Don't know, though. I would not put it in the paper. I'll share it as what I've been told here. I'm not confident enough. The other rumour I heard today, with his wife and young family, might be keen on Europe, and Catalans was mentioned.
Right. So you don't think the Roosters are a show? A lot of people at Manly are convinced that that's where he's going.
There are 2 people I would never ever rule out in this scramble for his signature.
Who?
Philip Ronald Gould at the Canterbury Bulldogs.
Never heard of him either.
Nick Politis at the Sydney Roosters.
I'm scared of him.
Why are you scared of him?
Just him.
You're his mate.
I'm scared of him.
I've seen you at dinner and lunches with Nick.
Oh, and you've never been there?
No, I love socialising with Nick.
Hey, I'm at the end of the table. You're 1A in business class.
I socialise with a lot of people. I used to go out all the time. I tell you, it was great company. No, that's why it was dirty when they got punted.
Who?
Lee Hadja Pentalis.
Oh, really?
And Justin Fiasco Pasco.
See,
the lunches we had, what's Hems's place over at Leichhardt where Kenty bumped into the tree? What's it called?
Bumps, gee, you kind.
Well,
yeah, Toddies.
Toddies.
We've been there before.
Gosh, we've had some good lunches there with our West Tigers.
I never, ever got on with Lee. All I ever got from Lee was legal letters.
Yeah, well...
About 9 of them.
I can exclusively reveal he did not cop you.
I can exclusively reveal I don't give a shit. Anyway, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, so Cherry Evans, I remember being at the press conference when he backflipped on the Titans deal. I remember he said, he just admitted straight up, I fueled the speculation. I wanted to go on because I wanted to see how much I could get out of Manly. And I wouldn't put it past him to be doing the same thing now. And I'm not having a crack at Cherry. I reckon he's smart. He's not an idiot. I reckon I wouldn't be surprised if he's playing us all and ends up with a bigger deal somewhere else.
Yeah.
You don't reckon?
I don't think he would have been so powerful in his statements on 100% footy the other night in that he had no interest in accepting an offer that had just been put to him via NRL 360.
I'm not necessarily saying...
it was a powerful...
Yeah, but Buzz, he said the same thing in 2016.
Yeah.
But I know it's different. I get it. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's stirring up interest in the with other clubs to make an offer and squeeze the last bit of money out of them. All right, let's go.
But he deserves more than Manly offered him. 100%. He deserves more respect than Manly have shown him.
I'm with you. I'm team DCE on this one. Brisbane Olympics. They finally announced this week what their stadium infrastructure will look like. 62,000 seat stadium at Vic Park, new aquatic centre. All part of $7.1 billion of taxpayer funding. The old Gabba looks like she's going to be knocked down. What do you reckon, Buzz?
Why does no one care in Brisbane? Or why does no one show any romance to the Gabba or being bulldozed?
The Gabbatoir.
The Gabbatoir.
Is being sent to the abattoir.
There is so much history. You know they used to race the dogs there, the dish lickers? They did.
I know.
It used to be a dog track. The 1960 Tide Test.
Yeah,
the most famous test match in this country, probably with the Centenary Test. Webby, they're tearing down history. Queensland won their first Shield there in 95. You remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember?
Not really.
But why don't we just... Why was Adelaide Oval not bulldozed? Why did they refurbish it?
Because they've got. But
why did they refurbish the MCG?
Yeah, but they're different. They don't have those old heritage listed stands like they do.
The cricket ground does.
I know the cricket. They all have that. But
let's bulldoze it.
But no. But the Gabba doesn't have that. It's a concrete jungle.
It has history, sporting history.
Well, it's like how they moved. They don't use the Wacker now. They use Optus Oval.
But hasn't the Premier done a backflip? He went to the election, said he was not going to spend money on stadiums.
Well, he wasn't going to. They weren't going to spend that much. Well, no, they weren't going to spend that much on a new stadium.
And the backlash he's got from rugby league is that Suncorp needs to spruce up more than a coat of paint, and there's a magic round.
So this is what I think. I reckon it's a real missed opportunity. So up until this is how rat's ass the whole thing's been. Up until the very last minute, Swimming Australia had no idea they were getting a new $650 million aquatic centre. That was up until the weekend. And only got announced on Tuesday. But they were of the opinion that it would be a part of this new Brisbane Live side, which has now been put on the back burner. I cannot believe, having covered swimming at the Paris Olympics, where they had a drop-in pool in the middle of a football stadium, an indoor football stadium, and now they're going to do the same thing in LA at SoFi Stadium, which is the home of the LA Rams and the Chargers. Could you imagine if they did that at Suncorp?
Oh, yeah.
Spruce up Suncorp, put a roof on it, drop in pool, bring state of origin atmosphere to an Olympic swing meet. It would be gangbusters. And they haven't done it.
No.
I know it would have cost a lot of money. It's not really ours to spend, but I still think it's a missed opportunity.
We should do more on stadiums because the diabolical state in Sydney of a core stadium, and Bulldog Richie's written a piece about Canterbury and South threatening to look elsewhere. I don't know where else they can go because, they've been promised upgrades at a core, better corporate facilities, a roof over the top, and it's never ever happened.
No.
We can't keep playing rugby league out of Shark Park in its current state. It is an embarrassment to rugby league. The chairman's club is a tent or a marquee on the hill. That's what it is, Webby. And it can't continue.
Well,
Cronulla own the ground.
Cronulla
need to give the stadium, hand it over free of charge to the New South Wales Venues, New South Wales, the government. Let them rebuild it. Let them build a boutique 18,000, 20,000. We'll lease it back off them.
Where would you build it at Shark Park?
At Shark Park.
Where it is now?
Yes.
They've built all around it. Too many apartments.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
So that you're not allowed to build apartments near sporting venues?
Use Allianz. Get on the train and come to Allianz.
I will not renew my Sharks membership if they're not at Shark Park.
I'm devastated. All right, let's
Come on, host with the most. What do you got next?
Well, so,
very
George,
cocky over there, ain't
what
you?
do you mean?
I don't know.
I feel like I'm reading the news. I love it. Got my sheets of paper here. Ready?
Yeah. Off you go.
Back to
Keep
you.
going.
Back to you. Sport.
What do you want, a war story?
Weather's next. No, let's leave the hosting to me, you gibber.
Why don't you do
Boxing.
one of those old 2KY ads?
Yeah, man. Need a cab? Call Premier 13 10 17. What an idiot. Boxing. George Ferocious Kambosos Jr. won a grueling 12-round war against Jake Wiley, but it was nothing compared to the social media war waged between his father, Jim, and the former world champ, Michael Katsidis. You wrote about this on Monday.
Yeah.
Tell us all about it.
I think this podcast needs a no dickhead policy.
Oh, hang on. It's not your column, Buzz. It's our podcast.
My podcast. No, I don't want to give this Jim Kambosos the time of day. You know, in my column, I used to have UFC free zone. I had a Brat free zone where I wouldn't write about Kyrgios or Bernard Tomic. He's mad, this Jim Kambosos, and he sent me a couple of text messages with some very, very choice language in them, which I did not appreciate, and I replied to him and said, lose my phone number. I will never, ever deal with that man again. He has life.
Okay, not just about. So let's just get back to the story, not about yourself. What did he? What did he?
Sorry for giving people an insight into life on the beat. As a journalist,
I can't. What did he say to Michael Katsidis? He said, "I'm going to have you clipped."
Yeah, clipped. Yeah,
that sounds like somebody out of The Godfather.
Oh no.
He should have just sent him some fishes, some dead fish, and some newspaper.
You can't threaten violence on social media.
Leave the Twitter account, take the cannoli. That's
Poor
what he
old Katsidis, he's had a tough life. He's overcome a lot of issues, and he was a bit cheeky on social. Said, "Look, I might make a comeback after watching, George clobber this other fella who stepped in at late notice." But you just don't need to behave in the manner in which his father did. I like George. You and me have had a lot to do with him.
Yeah. I did a good weekend piece, a cover story on George, and spent, and I'd always heard like the word was that Jim was very heavy-handed. I just saw a father who wanted the best for his son, but it's become clear that, like a lot of fathers, they get in the way, but you got to draw the line at. Saying in a public forum you're going to clip people, that's Jimmy. That might be time for you to step aside. But I like George, but they've become very. I don't know what is it with boxers. They just go batshit crazy at some point. It's really sad because the way that his win over Lopez at Madison Square Garden should be remembered as one of the great moments in Australian boxing history.
Yeah, and then one of the great sporting moments, not just boxing. It was a phenomenal upset.
And
what I like about this story is I've made a judgment, and you've come around like you have many times and backed me. You're getting into the habit of that. I'm sort of showing a bit of leadership here with these sort of people we need to. I am.
You're starting to shit me, and what are we in? We're like 40 minutes into the first podcast.
Wow.
This could be the first and last. Righto, let's get into our next segment, which we will be calling War Stories. This will we talk about feuds and fights and all the great things that I've done during my career and some of what Buzz has done as well. It's a throwback. Yeah. It's a throwback. So just because I'm going to defer to my much older colleague here, Buzz, tell us, I want to hear about what's your biggest yarn or one of your biggest interviews?
My favourite interview, and it was up there with my biggest, in 1989. How many years ago was that, Webby? 36 years ago, something like that.
I was in year 9.
I managed to sit down with the greatest soccer manager of all time.
Graham Arnold? Oh,
no. Yeah. Sir Alex Ferguson in his office at Manchester. So I'll tell you the story how this came about. 1989, Ray Price... Poor bugger, when he retired in 86, he bought a couple of big trucks. He painted them blue and gold, Ray Price removeless. It went bust. So you saw Price, he was broken at 36 when he retired. Because he went broke, he had to go to the UK and he joined Wakefield Trinity. Big story.
That's right.
Comeback. So they sent me out. It was front page in the Daily Mirror at the time. I was filing for the Mirror and the Telegraph.
And the Mirror, just for the younger listeners out there, was like the afternoon paper.
Yeah, 12 cents at the time. And anyway, Pricey made the comeback, and then Canberra were over there. They'd won the World Club Challenge. I covered that. Mal, Laurie, Ricky, all those guys. But I read a tiny little brief in the Manchester Evening News about this Aussie schoolboy who was trialling to get a contract with the great Manchester United. So for 6 weeks, and they were having a shocking year, United, and Sir Alex Ferguson didn't want a bar, he was just coaching. So anyway, I rang up to about 6 weeks. They said, "You're so bloody persistent. Come in. We'll organise the kid out of school to see you." So I can still remember walking into the car park at Old Trafford, and this kid with a school backpack walks in. Do you know who it was?
Ryan Giggs.
Mark Bosnich.
Oh.
Mark Bosnich. And we met the PR guy, said the boss wants to see us. So I thought he'd take us upstairs and we'd meet the boss of communications or whatever. He leads us straight into Sir Alex Ferguson's office. So I'm sitting one side, Boz is next to me. Boz was 16, 17. Sir Alex on the other side. He made us a cup of tea himself, put kettle and, all this thing. And then what he said, this kid from Western Sydney, he said, is potentially the best young goalkeeper he's ever seen.
Yeah, right.
Turned out he had a purpose in having me there, in they were trying to get Bozza a work permit. Even though he was at school, they needed a permit for him to be able to play football in England. So this Ray Price comeback story became...
Down page very quickly.
No.
Sidebar.
It was because Boz was from Western Sydney and was a mad Parramatta fan. All he was asking me about was rugby league. It was a front page story and a spread at the back, but just sitting there opposite Sir Alex, who's the greatest American NFL?
Vince Lombardi.
Vince Lombardi. He's sort of is it fair to say he's the Vince Lombardi?
He's got that. He's certainly got that. He's in that echelon.
And you know what? When he put his book,
history.
When he did his book, and when he came here for a Melbourne Cup, I rang and he remembered, which was really special. And thinking of all the interviews, he never did one-on-ones, Webby. That was what was special.
Did you find him hard? Like, to me, the thought of...
No, he had a purpose. He wanted to... I really just turned my tape recorder on.
But did you find... Were you nervous being in his presence?
Oh, absolutely.
How old would you have been then, Buzz?
What year was it? 89, 31.
You'd have been in fine form back then.
But, look, just to sit there and have a cup of tea with him. And what made the story so special too is that Bozza became an Australian sporting legend via a lot of career ups and downs. And, I just saw him and he was so innocent back then and so dreamy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
he was dreaming of... And then all the...
a wide-eyed optimist.
Yeah, well, you're a better wordsmith than me. But just to see him and we talk about it...
Yet to be chewed up and spat out by the tabloids.
Yeah, the tabloids, yeah.
They got him.
We talk about it often.
He's one of the great men, Bozza. He's one of the great men, Bozza.
Yeah, isn't he good company at lunch?
He's
loud, he's outrageous.
He calls me on my birthday every year.
Does he really?
Just out of nowhere, just rings me, mate, Bozza, just saying happy birthday.
Yeah,
he rings me. He remembers my birthday more than my old man.
Wow, how good's that?
Yeah.
But look, each week, as you said, I think you should have a turn next week, but I'll have a crack at the biggest story. I can still remember my first front page. I'll keep that for another day, but it was sad. It was a scandal, and then my career became, all scandal, didn't it? But
well, let's we'll talk each week about not just our biggest stories but also it's a good part of the podcast to show the listener just how things sort of happen. People have got this really weird And even more so now because of online journalism and clickbait. They wonder what your motives are behind a story. So it's probably going to give an insight into how things work.
I want to take people someday into a newspaper newsroom and let people understand how technology in particular has changed. And the way journalism's gone, not necessarily for the better, but it's survival mode to just pump out.
It's very different.
But good journalism will always work, as we saw with your magnificent piece on Philip Gould in the Australia.
Thank you. The Opus.
Yeah, the Opus, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's it. Like I agree. I think journalism, the good journalism, the quality journalism comes to the top. But I don't know. It's funny. It's people are so cynical about how we go about our jobs and why we write the things that we do, which is fair enough. I get that. But people say you're just doing that for the clicks. I couldn't give two shits about the clicks. No. I write a story. I want
to ask you a question. When you worked at the Sydney Morning Herald, you were billed as independent always. And I often wrote about you and I said the sometimes independent.
I know, because you're very nasty.
What's the deal on the Australian? Are you independent?
100%. Yeah. I'm loving working for that paper. I never.
He's a good fella, isn't he?
Kelvin Healy, the editor there.
Ben English is a good fella too, mate. There's some good editors in our company.
They are. Look, I loved being at the Herald Buzz. Like, I was there for 12 years and I was there for 4 years before that, before you headhunted me to come over to the Telegraph.
Took 2 schooners at the...
What a load of bullshit. It took about 15 schooners, and after 2 schooners, you go, I don't want to talk about money. And then by the end of the night, it's like, how much? But you got me in there. I learned a lot under you, Buzz. It was,
that's kind of you to say.
Well, I did. You've been a big influence on my career.
Tabloid journalism, yeah.
Well, I like to swing between the two. Yeah. But I when I was at the Herald, I was never told at all at any stage what to write by anybody. I did get my toes trodden on a few times over Channel 9 copy. Yeah. There was one famous time when I wrote about Rabs, not about whether he was going to call that 100th Origin. Remember that?
Yeah.
And
big story.
I got in trouble for writing about that. To which I said, "Don't tell me what to write." But no one at the Australian has ever told me what to write at all. It's funny. There's a real perception that you get told exactly what to write at news, and it's such a fallacy. It's like tinfoil hat stuff. So
I had a little pressure during Super League. But
I can only imagine.
Let's talk about it because it's a good segment.
That's a story.
What's next, host?
That's a story for another time. Fearless forecasts, predictions, tips for the weekend. What do you got?
I'm just looking at the NRL round. And to me, it's hard. It's really, really hard to find an upset, Webby. The Dolphins can't beat the Broncos. The Dragons can't beat Storm. I'm looking. Oh, dear. Look, I don't know what the betting is, but you want a good thing?
Yeah.
You want a good thing?
Yeah. That's all I deal in, Buzz.
The West Tigers will make it 3 in a row at Campbelltown, and they will knock off the New Zealand Warriors who won their last 2.
I think they've been up the last 2, the Warriors, at home Friday night.
Yes.
Yeah, they remind me a little bit of Canberra, like Canberra last weekend. They were due for that loss, Canberra.
Yes. So that's my tip.
Okay.
I don't bet on rugby league, but no. I'm happy to try to steer punters into a winner.
Well, look, I do bet on rugby league excessively, so I've got a Manly multiple, as I'm calling it, a Mestrov multi. I think what's the news of what's happened this week with Cherry Evans will fire them up.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I got Manly 19 plus.
Para, yeah.
Para. 9, because Para, I know they were better, but I just think, and it's at Brookvale Sunday afternoon. Manly 19 plus. Turbo anytime try scorer. DCE.
Jeez, that's a scoop.
DCE anytime try scorer.
Really?
I reckon,
What odds is that?
$7.
I think we need to, next week I'm going to come in with what the Tab and Ladbrokes and all them say, that line where it says gamble responsibly, think with your head. And
if you're not shaking, you haven't put enough on, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Well, look, I don't want to suggest that any wagering operators out there that may want to sponsor us are listening, but this would be a perfect time in the podcast to plug them.
For a little call out.
That's a little call out, exactly. Look, we're only a fledgling podcast.
We're nearly done, aren't we?
I think we're done, Buzz.
How long
what do you
have we
reckon?
been going, Webby?
I reckon we're going for about 50 minutes, and that should be enough.
You know what? It's been a lot of fun.
It is.
And I really enjoyed it. But as I said, I just want to give, rather than just break news and give opinions, I want to give people insights into our lives as journos, and I do. Mate, whenever I get pulled up in a pub, people just ask a billion questions about what you do.
I know. It's a mystery to them. It's a mystery to me what you do.
Oh, is it?
It is. So listen, if you want to follow us, follow, subscribe, and engage with us on socials, you'll find us at OTR Buzz and Webby on Instagram and TikTok. Buzz, that was great.
Thank you, Webby. You've done strong.
I'll see you next week.
Mate. You've played strong.
I'll see you next week.
Don't you dare withdraw that hand.
I'll see you next week unless Lee Hatchepin tells us and we're off the air.
Okay, see
Good
you.
on you. Speak to you next week.